It was a rainy afternoon when she told me she was leaving. Her lover was waiting around the corner, wearing a smile I would never forget. The silence in the room grew thick as I held the DNA test, revealing that this was not just a blow to my heart, but also a betrayal of my 5-year-old son's paternity. With a swift motion, I let the paper drop onto the table, her eyes widening as she read the words that would change everything. My name is Samuel. Truth can destroy, but it can also set you free. Looking at the DNA test, a wave of emotions washed over me. A mix of anger, sadness, and confusion engulfed me as I tried to process what that piece of paper meant. What I had always considered an unquestionable truth was now shrouded in doubt. My daughter, little Louisa, was my reason for living, and suddenly, everything I knew was at stake. I dared not look at Beatrice immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the document, and I knew the questions hung in the air. What I really wanted to know was if she was aware of what was at stake. To my surprise, it wasn't her who broke the silence. It was my mother, Helena, who entered the room with a worried expression on her face. "Samuel, I overheard part of your conversation. What's going on?" she asked, but the hesitation in her voice reflected how much she already sensed about the situation. I could feel the weight of expectation. It was as if, looking at her, I saw the fragility of our relationship, of my fatherhood, of what I believed to be a safe home for Louisa. Before I could respond, Tiago appeared as if he had sensed the tension in the room. He was my safe harbor, always ready to support me, and in that moment, I needed him more than ever. "Samuel, what is this?" Tiago said, pointing at the test. His tone was serious, but I could see the concern in his eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to find words that made sense, that expressed the pain I felt. "It's a DNA test, Tiago." My daughter's test. I couldn't stop the anger from creeping into my voice. What I really wanted was a hug, someone to tell me that everything would be okay. But deep down, I knew the truth was closer than I wanted to admit. Beatrice finally lifted her head, her gaze now a mix of fear and defiance. "Samuel, you can't just decide this based on a piece of paper. I didn't know you had a test. I have nothing to hide." The way she spoke left me even more confused. There was a defensiveness in her words, but also a hint of vulnerability I hadn't expected. The betrayal was still fresh in my memory, and what she said seemed like a desperate attempt to ease her guilt. "You left me for another guy, Beatrice. How can I trust you now?" The pain in my voice was undeniable, and the words came out sharper than I would have liked. The relationship I had with her, once filled with promises and dreams, had now turned into an emotional battlefield. Helena, trying to ease the tension, placed her hand on my shoulder and spoke with the calmness that always characterized her. "Samuel, sweetheart, breathe. Let's talk about this. Let's understand. What do you really want to know?" Her question made me reflect. What did I really want? I wanted to believe that Louisa was mine. I wanted that certainty to remain unshaken. But doubt had already settled in, and I knew I needed to investigate further. "I just want to know the truth, Mom. If she's mine or not. I can't live like this, with this uncertainty." Tiago moved closer, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. He had always been the type of friend who knew what to say without needing to say much. The simple gesture of support meant more than words. I looked at Beatrice and saw her expression change. She was nervous, maybe even feeling cornered. I didn't want to do this, but the need to know the truth was greater than I was. "Samuel," she started, "I never wanted it to come to this. It may not seem like it, but I truly loved you, and I still care about Louisa." Her words sounded like a distant echo. I wanted to believe there was truth in her intentions, but the betrayal still hurt. Why should I trust someone who had chosen another? Silence reigned in the room once more, and I felt the weight of responsibility on my shoulders, as if Louisa's life depended on my ability to make the right decision. Helena tried to intervene again. Let's do this together, Samuel. You don't have to go through this alone. If you want a test, let's get it done. But don't let this consume you. Louisa needs you. My mother's love had always been a beacon in times of darkness. I looked at her, feeling the determination in her words. I didn't want Louisa to be just a DNA test. I wanted her to be my daughter, with all the joy that represented. You're right, Mom. I won't let this destroy me, but I need answers. I want to know if everything we built was real. Tiago nodded, as if he were encouraging me to move forward. With a renewed sense of purpose, I decided I would have to face the situation head-on, not just for myself, but for Louisa. She deserved the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With my determination renewed, I prepared for what lay ahead. The road would be hard and full of uncertainties, but I knew I wouldn't be alone on this journey. My mother's love and Tiago's support would strengthen me. And who knows, perhaps the truth wouldn't be so bitter after all. I took a deep breath as I looked at the DNA test I had left on the table. The sheet of paper felt like it weighed a ton, carrying not just the result of a test, but also the weight of a possible change in my life. It was the key to opening a door I feared, yet at the same time longed to cross. Meanwhile, the thought of Louisa, my daughter, remained in my mind like a beacon in the storm. Regardless of what the result indicated, I knew my love for her wouldn't change. As a father, my role was to protect and love, and that I would do, no matter what truth that test might reveal. My mother, Helena, entered the room with a worried expression. She always had an incredible ability to sense when something was wrong. "Samuel, dear, are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft as a warm embrace. The warmth of her gaze always calmed me, but in that moment I couldn't hide my anxiety. I'm trying to figure out what to do," I replied, attempting to avoid the raw truth that tormented me. Before I could continue, she moved closer and sat beside me, placing her hand gently on my shoulder. The connection we shared was a lifeline amid the chaos. "You don't have to face this alone," she said. "We're in this together. Remember, the truth can be painful, but what matters is how you handle it." Her words resonated deeply within me, calming part of the storm that was unfolding inside. I needed to confront Beatrice, but I also wanted to understand why this was happening. A whirlwind of emotions took over me, and I wondered if I would have the courage to face the mistakes of the past. Tiago, my best friend, called at that moment. His voice sounded confident as always, and I knew he would bring a bit of light to my dark day. "Hey man, how are you doing?" he asked, concerned. "Have you talked to your mom yet?" He always knew when I needed a shoulder to lean on. I explained the situation to him, and his momentary silence spoke more than words could express. "Samuel, you know I'm here for you. No matter what happens, I'll always be by your side." That gave me some strength. Tiago was an anchor amid my confusion, and his loyalty made me feel there was hope. After hanging up, I decided to find a quiet place to reflect. The small park near my house had always been my refuge, a place where I could let my thoughts wander. The fresh air and the sight of children playing brought a brief moment of peace. As I watched a little girl push her younger brother on a swing, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. I remembered Louisa, with her radiant smile and contagious laughter. The thought that I might not be her biological father was unbearable. My connection with her went beyond any DNA test. It was a bond built on love and shared moments. As the afternoon turned into night, I returned home where Helena was waiting for me with a warm dinner. The aroma of the meal she had prepared brought back memories of happy times. We talked about trivial things, but I knew the tension still lingered in the air. With every bite, I pondered the conversation I would inevitably need to have with Beatrice. What would I say? How would I explain my feelings without letting anger dominate the situation? When night fell, I sat on the sofa, still wrestling with my thoughts. The DNA test was right there, in view, but something bigger was at stake. I didn't want this test to define my relationship with Louisa. Instead of getting lost in confusion, I started imagining a life where, regardless of the outcome, I would continue to be a present and loving father. That would be the true victory. The following days were a mix of anxiety and hope. Tiago continued to be my constant support, even suggesting I write a letter to Beatriz, expressing my feelings before confronting her in person. You can sort your thoughts out, and who knows, it might make the conversation easier, he said. The idea seemed sensible, so I began to draft words that reflected my pain, confusion, and desire for clarity. Finally, the day to meet Beatriz arrived. My heart raced as I walked to the cafe where we used to meet. The memory of happy moments contrasted with the anxiety I felt now. When I saw her sitting at the table, a wave of emotions took over me. Her beauty still struck me, but the betrayal was a shadow I couldn't ignore. "Hey, Samuel," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was as if time had stopped for a moment, and I knew I needed to be direct. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Her expression turned serious, and I realized she knew something was wrong. The conversation that followed was filled with emotions and revelations. Beatriz explained her reasons, and as I listened to her words, I realized that the pain she caused was just part of what I needed to confront. With a heavy heart, I was able to express what I felt, like a torrent of feelings that finally found an outlet. The truth was at stake, but more importantly, the connection I had with Luisa was what truly mattered. And deep down, that connection made me realize that, regardless of what happened, my love for her was unwavering. In this path of self-discovery and acceptance, I understood that even in the darkest situations, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, ready to guide those who seek the truth. If you also identified with this story and wish to follow more emotional and inspiring accounts, don't hesitate to subscribe. I looked at the DNA test that rested on the table, its presence heavy like a burden I wasn't sure I was ready to carry. Every time my eyes met it, I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. It was a question that could destroy or save the relationship I had with my daughter, and the consequences were unsettling. Helena, sensing my internal struggle, sat down across from me, her gaze understanding in a way only a mother could possess. "Samuel, you need to think about what's best for you and for her. This doubt consumes you, and the truth, no matter how painful it might be, is the first step toward healing," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. Her words resonated within me like a familiar melody, reminding me that I wasn't alone on this journey. Tiago, who had always been my support in difficult times, arrived shortly after. He sat next to me and, without hesitation, picked up the DNA test, holding it between his fingers. "Look, no matter what the result shows, you're an incredible father. Your daughter needs you, regardless of what has happened between you and Beatriz," he affirmed, his encouraging voice giving me a bit of strength. I wanted to believe what he was saying, but doubt still haunted me. The fact that Beatriz had made such a drastic decision and left me behind made me question everything, even the fatherhood I had always considered unshakable. I decided I couldn't postpone this situation any longer, so I took a deep breath and held the DNA test in my hands. "Tomorrow, I'm going to take the test," I announced, determined to face whatever came next. Both Helena and Tiago exchanged glances, as if they were certain this was a necessary step, but at the same time, realizing the pain it would bring. "If you need me, I'll be here," Tiago said sincerely, and I felt a wave of gratitude for having someone like him by my side. Helena, in turn, moved closer and held my hand, conveying a comfort that only a mother can offer in times of crisis. That night, insomnia caught up with me. My mind wouldn't stop wandering between memories of Beatriz and the joyful moments we shared. On one hand, there had been true love, but the betrayal she inflicted on me seemed to overshadow everything. I remembered how we laughed together and how she had always been a present mother to our daughter. But what remained of that now? Was it possible to rebuild what was lost? I felt a wave of mixed anger and sadness, for it wasn't just the betrayal that affected me, but the uncertainty about the future of my relationship with my daughter. The next day, I went to the lab, the weight of the DNA test following me with every step. I didn't know how to react upon seeing the receptionist, a stranger who was now part of this dramatic chapter of my life. With a forced smile, I handed over the form and waited, trying to distract myself with the conversations around me, but the anticipation was palpable. The idea that the truth could be revealed in a matter of days left me in a constant state of tension. Every moment seemed to drag on, and I wondered how I could handle the answer, no matter what it was. After the sample was taken, on my way back home, I found Tiago waiting for me at the door. He noticed my heavy expression and pulled me inside. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked, his genuine concern clear in his eyes. I hesitated, but then I opened up. I shared my fears and insecurities, the images of Beatrice drawing a line between what I was certain of and what could become a great uncertainty. He listened attentively, without rushing to interrupt, allowing me to empty the emotional burden I had been accumulating. "Samuel, things may seem dark now, but remember that you're not alone. You have your mother, me, and above all, your daughter who needs you. Whatever the result, you will always be a loving father," Tiago said with conviction. His words reminded me of what truly mattered, and although I still felt vulnerable, a small spark of hope began to ignite within me. The following days were torturous. Each minute felt like an eternity as I awaited the result. The routine with my daughter became a refuge. Every laugh of hers was a balm for my wounded soul, and every moment we spent together reminded me of the love that still existed between us. I tried to forget the doubts that haunted me, diving headfirst into playtime, but deep down, the uncertainty remained like a constant shadow. Finally, the phone call I had been waiting for arrived. The doctor's voice on the other end was clear, but each word sounded distant as my heart raced. He confirmed what we all feared or hoped to hear. The result was ready, and I had to pick it up in person. I didn't know how to react, what to do with that information that would change everything. With a heavy heart, I went to the lab. Tiago, sensing my anxiety, decided to accompany me. Upon entering, an awkward silence took over me. What I would discover there could shape our future. As I waited, I looked into Tiago's eyes, which, despite his serious expression, conveyed support. I needed to face this truth, not just for myself, but for my daughter. The decision was in my hands, and no matter what happened, I was determined to be the father she deserved. The silence deepened as the DNA test remained on the table, like a weight I couldn't ignore. The idea that my fatherhood could be questioned consumed me from within. I remembered Beatrice, how she had been such an important part of my life, and how the trust I had in her now felt as fragile as glass. The pain of betrayal still burned, and knowing that the only person I had shared my world with could have deceived me this way was unbearable. Tiago broke the silence by asking if I was ready to open the envelope. I looked at him, and in his eyes, I saw the desire to help. He had always been by my side, but now it felt different. The situation was much more complex than mere emotional support. I was about to confront the possibility of losing what I considered most precious. I took a deep breath, and in doing so, sought to find a little courage within me. It wasn't just a question of identity, but the truth about my daughter as well. With trembling hands, I held the envelope. It felt like a portal to an unknown future, a future that could be dark or bright, depending on what was written on that paper. I was on the edge of an emotional abyss. What was going through my mind was a confusion of feelings: love, betrayal, doubt, and the desperate need to protect my daughter from any pain. Helena entered the room, noticing the tense atmosphere. Her eyes quickly landed on the DNA test and my worried expression. She approached, placing her hand on my shoulder, a gesture that brought me a small measure of comfort. "Samuel, no matter what happens, "You will always be her father," she said, her voice soft yet firm. That simple yet powerful phrase resonated within me. Despite the uncertainties, I needed to remember that my role as a father was more than just a test on a piece of paper. I decided I should open the envelope. With a determined motion, I tore the top and pulled the paper out. Tiago's gaze was fixed on me, and the anticipation hung in the air like a storm about to break. I struggled to read, but the words danced on the page, nebulous and confusing. Finally, I managed to decipher the first lines, and my heart raced as I realized what they meant. The truth was revealing itself, and with it came feelings I wasn't prepared to face. The words were clear, but interpreting them wasn't so simple. If the test confirmed paternity, it would be a relief, mixed with sadness for knowing Beatrice had betrayed me. If paternity was not confirmed, I would have to deal with the loss of trust. Not just in her, but in myself as well. My mind spun, and the feeling of helplessness washed over me, making the room seem to swirl. Tiago stepped closer, sensing my internal struggle. "Samuel, what does the test say?" His voice was a thread of hope amidst the emotional turmoil. I took a deep breath, trying to gather the courage to share what was written. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I confessed, my voice choked. Helena squeezed my shoulder, as if she could transfer some strength to me. "Son, no matter what the answer says, you're not alone. We are here with you." With a sudden wave of determination, I looked at the paper again. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With a trembling voice, I began to read the results aloud. "The analysis confirms that—" I paused, feeling the pressure of everyone's expectations around me. In the back of my mind, a voice whispered that this could change my life forever. "Paternity is—" I paused, feeling the pressure of everyone's expectations around me. In the back of my mind, a voice whispered that this could change my life forever. "Paternity is positive," I finally managed to say, my breath quickening. A heavy silence settled in the room. The weight of the words hung in the air, and I realized that this confirmation was more than just a piece of information. It was the dividing line between what I knew and what I would fear. "So, she really is your daughter," Tiago murmured, but his expression was a mix of relief and sadness. It wasn't the result I had expected, but now reality was undeniable. Helena smiled, tears of happiness mixed with a silent pain for the situation. "She is a blessing, Samuel, and you will always be a part of her life, no matter what," she said, wrapping me in a tight hug. The truth was that even amid the chaos that was forming in my life, my daughter still represented a future full of hope. What would happen now? What would I say to Beatrice? These questions piled up in my mind, but one thing was certain. I needed to focus on what truly mattered. My paternal instincts were stronger than the betrayal I had faced. As a father, I had the responsibility to create a safe and loving environment for my daughter, regardless of Beatrice's choices. So, with a new sense of purpose, I looked at Tiago and Helena. Their support was my foundation in this difficult moment. Together, we would face the challenges that lay ahead, and I was determined not to let the pain of the past overshadow the love I felt for my daughter. Now, more than ever, I needed to be the father she deserved, a beacon of hope amid the storm. Sitting at the kitchen table, the silence weighed heavily on us, as if the very air was aware of the tension permeating the situation. The morning light filtered through the curtains, but even the brightest light couldn't dispel the shadow that had settled in my heart. With the DNA test before me, the reality of my situation felt more real than ever. As I looked at those printed words, I felt each letter was an accusation. Unanswered questions haunted my mind. If my daughter's paternity was in doubt, what would that mean for her? And if the truth was more painful than I could bear? Helena, sensing my torment, approached and placed her hand on my shoulder, offering silent comfort. Her gaze was filled with compassion, and I saw in her the strength that had always guided me. "Samuel, remember that you are an incredible father. Regardless of what the test shows, the love you feel for her won't change," she said, her words echoing in my mind. But the doubt was treacherous. It seeped into every thought, making it hard to believe that. With a lump in my throat, I looked to Tiago, seeking an answer I still hadn't found within myself. "Have you thought about talking to Beatrice about this?" Tiago suggested cautiously, knowing the conversation wouldn't be easy. The idea of facing Beatrice again sent a chill down my spine. Our paths had diverged so painfully, and I didn't know if I was ready to reopen old wounds. Yet a part of me recognized that clarity could bring peace. The curiosity about what she truly felt and what had led her to her choices was becoming an urgent need. I decided I needed answers, not just for myself, but for my daughter. "Yeah, I think I'm gonna talk to her," I replied, my voice sounding firmer than I felt. The fear was still there, but a spark of determination began to shine within me. What could be worse than what I had already faced? Confronting Beatrice and hearing the truth could be, perhaps, the first step toward healing. After a brief moment of hesitation, Tiago encouraged me. "I can go with you. You don't have to go through this alone." His offer brought a small relief. Having my best friend's support made this monumental task more bearable. "Thanks, Tiago. Your presence will help a lot." The idea of having someone by my side made the journey feel more feasible, and so we arranged to meet Beatrice at the cafe where we used to gather. In the following days, a cloud of anxiety hung over me. I tried to focus on everyday things, but the uncertainty wouldn't let me be at peace. Every laugh from my daughter was a reminder of what was at stake. How could I face Beatrice, knowing the truth could change everything? The love I felt from my daughter was all I had, and that made the situation even more tormenting. With every step taken, the anticipation grew, and at the same time, the fear of discovering something devastating loomed. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. As I headed to the cafe, my mind raced through every possible scenario. The smell of fresh coffee, mixed with the aroma of warm pastries, hit me as I entered the place. But instead of bringing comfort, it only intensified my anxiety. When I spotted Beatrice at a corner table, my heart raced. She looked different, yet the same. The hair I used to caress was tied up in a casual bun, and her gaze was distant, as if she were lost in thought. "Hi, Samuel," she greeted, her voice soft but tinged with uncertainty. "Hi, Beatrice. Thanks for meeting me here." My voice came out quieter than I intended, but she nodded, encouraging me to continue. The conversation started with casual questions, an effort to soften the tension in the air. But as the conversation progressed, I realized there was no way to avoid what I really wanted to know. I need to talk about the DNA test," I said, the weight of sincerity heavy in my words. The revelation hung in the air, and I saw the tension rise on her face. "Samuel, this isn't necessary. You know I would never do anything to hurt you and our daughter." Her defensiveness seemed automatic, and frustration began to build inside me. "But you did, Beatrice. The betrayal and your choices left me shattered. How can I trust you now?" The tone of my voice was raised, but I couldn't control it. She took a deep breath, appearing to reflect on the weight of my words. "I understand your pain. I made a mistake, and I can't change that. But you need to understand that our daughter is a part of you, regardless of any test. I don't love her any less because of what happened." What she said struck me, but there was a part of me that fought against rationality. And what if it's not true? And what if all of this is a lie I'm telling myself to avoid more pain? The insecurity in my words was palpable. Beatrice looked at me with a mix of pain and determination. "Samuel, do you really think I could do something like that? I left you because I couldn't handle my own fears, but that never meant I didn't value what we had. The sincerity in her gaze began to break down some of the defenses I had built. Still, the doubt persisted, a poison that corroded my heart. The dialogue continued, but with each word exchanged, I realized that the answer I sought wasn't just in the revelation of a test, but in the ability to forgive and in the strength to rebuild what had been broken.